Okay, so today we want to welcome Katrina Bieler and kind of also ourselves, because often what happens with this podcast is we want to speak a lot with the people we have on, but the reason we have Katrina on is that she wrote back to us after a podcast interview or one of the episodes and said, "Oh, I have so many questions." And we have gotten some feedback also that people, are like, "But who are you guys? Can you tell a little more about yourself?" And that's why we wanted to do this kind of both here about your life, Katrina, of course, but also giving you the opportunity to ask all the questions you want.
Okay,
so welcome.
thank you. I was so delighted when I wrote, and the answer came back right away, like, yes, let's try it. And yeah, and I wrote in a moment after I had listened to a podcast, and this had happened to me several times. After I listened, I was so full of joy. And I would turn off the podcast and just keep doing my work that I needed to do, but just with this joy bubbling up in me. And when I was writing out like all my questions and thoughts, I realized I was like, when you discover something beautiful or something that brings us joy, like you just can't help but say, like, where does this come from? Who are these people? And so finally, after one episode, I was like, I just can't handle it. I have to write back. I subscribed to your newsletter, and I just replied to the newsletter saying, please let me ask you all my questions.
so here we are. How should we start?
Well, I mean, I thought it makes sense to start at the beginning. So I've heard, in the podcast, I've heard that you were living sort of a typical life, that Cecilie had decided to stay at home with the children. And in my experience, that's already kind of a radical decision, that you're not going to go to work. So, but then when I lived in Switzerland, the idea of homeschooling was sort of like you were saying, I'm not going to participate in the common culture anymore. I'm going to remove my child from this common life. And I think that what I've heard in you, the common life is very important, actually. Like you really believe in a common good. So I would just want to know, where did the idea come from, and what did it mean for you
to begin this? Homeschooling or staying at home before school with the children?
I think we should.
I think you could start it with staying at home.
With our beginning. So actually, beginning. So in the beginning, there was light.
There was light. Yeah.
Where was the word?
Okay. No. So I have a beginning that starts before he has a beginning, because I had my first child on my own. And then he entered the scene when she was 5. And soon enough, we had some kids together. So my beginning was already kind of radical, because I chose to have a child on my own when I was young. Most people would have had an abortion in my situation, but that was not really on my horizon. That's not what I wanted. So I was radical in becoming a mother, you could say, and I had to fight against all sorts of prejudice on what's it like and why would I be a single mother when I was in my early 20s, and would I ever finish my education, and could it be a good life, these things. So but I think I've always been a little bit weird, or not really
untamable,
but not really adapted very well. I have 4 parents, because my biological parents divorced when I was very young and remarried the right one fairly quickly. So I grew up with 4 parents, 2 homes. Mm-hmm. And they all said that I was the one they just couldn't, they couldn't teach me, or what is that called? What's opdrag in English? They couldn't tell me what to do. They couldn't correct me. They couldn't control me. I would do my own thing. So I think I have it kind of in my spirit somehow, but I was not as strong as I would have liked to be. When I look back, I was just 48 yesterday, and I've been a mother now half of my life. My oldest daughter is 24. And I would have loved to be much more radical and much stronger. I was really severely influenced by what was going on around me, especially the first child. I was all alone and pushed from everybody had an opinion, and I really had to stand on my feet. And then it was a challenge to be honest, it was a challenge to let him in on it.
Of course.
Because I was already quite radical, and my mother was a wild hippie, and I was used to people doing other stuff than mainstream, but my husband is more of a nice guy.
Yeah. Such a nice guy.
So that was that. And I felt I walked back some steps and had to negotiate basic thing I thought was basic things, but they were quite radical from his point of view. And when we had children together, I had to acknowledge that there are two parents now, and I can't decide. That was, we made it work, and we both evolved. And and then after child number 2 we had together, which is my child 3, he adopted the first one, so it's our child 3. I had a severe cancer, and that was a game changer. I became very radical.
But also the reality of the cancer is the leukemia Cecilie had. She was more or less on hospital for half a year. And I was back home alone with 3 children, where the youngest was taken away from the breast.
Literally. When I was hospitalized.
So, and before that, we had kind of lined out, Cecilie has a fancy education as a psychologist, and she had some good ideas with stuff she wanted to make a PhD about, and we were more down the old classical line. But our oldest daughters were in a free school, and the kids were in a Waldorf institution, and it was already a little there. And then in the start, we tried the start after the cancer. I still took the kids to the institutions because Cecilie was severely, she was very sick still. But then the stronger she got, it just felt very, very weird to remove the most precious you had, the things you had been afraid to lose in your life, drive them away from you for 6 or 8 hours when you have been around to lose them.
At that point, to be honest, we didn't know for how long I would survive, so it didn't really make any sense. Not at all. So as soon as I gained some energy, we decided to take them out of, so that is child 2 and 3. We took them out of kindergarten, nursery, and started the home-based life, because we thought whatever hours they can have with their mother is precious, and we didn't know if I would be around next year. So that was our starting point.
And was that the year Storm didn't want to go to school? I think it was
the same year. Then I was pregnant with number 4 fairly quickly after that. I was pregnant all that year.
It's amazing that you got pregnant so quickly.
It was amazing, but it was hard. I'm obviously grateful for the child, but it was very hard to go straight from chemotherapy to pregnancy. Also, I was not that young. I was 37, something like that.
Okay.
And it was, Anyway, I'm happy I had him, obviously. So I had a year hoping that the disease wouldn't come back, being pregnant and at home with 2 children. And you were still working.
I was still working full time, and
that's so intense.
It was. Absolutely.
I want to say something about what you said, that moment, like that suffering, this possibility of death, it made you realize that your children were the thing that you most feared losing. And this is something I ponder a lot, because you give birth to a child and you look at that child and you think, where did all this goodness come from? And I remember when I looked at my first child, I just thought, you're so good. And I had this moment when I realized that I would never be able to love the goodness as good as it was. Like that I would fail. And it wasn't like I wanted to fail. I just knew like it's impossible for me to be so true to the goodness that's in this child. And then I realized like, and the world will fail her and she will fail. Like she won't be as good as she, do you know what I mean? Like we just fail ourselves too. And it wasn't like an accusation against anything. It was just this moment when I saw like, this gift is so much more than myself, my husband, or anyone can respond to adequately. Yeah. And then, of course, that's true. I fail a lot.
But then we also need to remember we are that gift as well for someone else. And
well, it was like, it also helped me realize too, like I have this goodness in me. And I think for me, the point was not so much I'm going to fail, but like, it is amazing that there's something so good that comes into the world. And like, that's really for me, what dominates is not the failure. I think that the recognition that I fail all the time was sort of just highlighted the mystery of all this goodness comes. But I like, sometimes I want to like shout at parents, like, remember this goodness.
Yeah.
Well, that's a whole other story. To stop yourself from trying to change how other people behave around their children.
For sure. But I guess what I want to say is, I think that it is such a gift to like have seen it and not just passed it by quickly, but like to have had the opportunity to make a judgment that this good is the most precious good, or one of the most precious goods. Like this good is worth like changing my whole life for.
So I didn't feel I as such changed my whole life. I think we already had the same values. I just became more radical. I already felt that my job as a mother was going to be the most important job I'd ever have in my life. I knew that. I remember talking to my grandmother about it before I fell sick. I just knew this is the thing. And I actually tried to negotiate a home-based life with my husband before I fell sick, but he didn't agree with the idea.
I'm afraid I couldn't.
He was afraid he couldn't provide, and he was
it's a lot of weight.
Feel fulfilled, and it was a lot of things. It came from love, but we ended with the compromise that the kids would go away for like 4 or 5 hours every day, and I would try to do something with my brain. In all honesty, I did the laundry, basically.
Just trying to stay on top of
it.
Give a mother of several children a few hours a day. It's basic stuff. You know, you'll have a shower and do the laundry, empty the dishwasher, go shopping, prepare the food.
Well, it's also very difficult. I mean, the idea that you can like switch on your brain. I was doing PhD work also when I got married. And then I stopped after having children, because this idea that you can sort of just turn your brain on and do this work and then turn it off and go back to life.
No, you can't.
But I want to reflect on the thing you said about the goodness. It reminds me of a thing we talk about as birthright, which is that when a child comes into the world, it is loved just by being. It is there, and that is enough. And it is fun how people feel they lose that right later in life. That the presence of just being a human being in the world is not good enough. You need to accomplish something to have a value.
I'll tell you why it happens. It's the schools.
It is.
It's the school system. It's the idea of the curriculum. It's the idea of the grading. It's the testing. The child is living a life basically doing something someone else decided they're supposed to do. Someone else decided it's important. Someone else decided it makes sense. And if you ask them why, from a child's point of view, they can't answer that question anymore.
You know,
they can't. It's
my
rubbish.
daughter.
What they say is just BS. There's no reality in it. And yet, this is what the child does for many hours every day. And everyone around them will be impressed if they do good. and disappointed if they don't, and ask them to do better. And they will evaluate the child based on the accomplishments on these parameters. Maybe there could be a family where you have some art going on and then there's that on top of it, but it's the same dynamic. The child will do a drawing and then mom and dad will say it's a good drawing. My worth is because I made a good drawing. What if my drawing was ugly? Would they still love me? And this dynamic is very, very, very bad for children.
And I think the dynamic, the part of the problem is the dynamic is like intergenerational. Like I went to school, I left very much with this idea that like I needed to earn as many gold stars as possible. And then, and I still sometimes find myself trying to earn the gold star or just even like thinking, well, if I just get my house clean, then I'll be good and the kids will be good and we'll all be good. And I reduce us all the time to something that could never compare to the goodness that I saw in them in that moment when I was, where did you come from? You're more than I could have made you. And
it's along the same line we talked about, or Cecilie has recently written a blog post about behave, the word behave, and because people think that they see unschooled children and it's like, oh, they behave so well. And it's a weird word because they do not behave, they do not act, they are just there.
Themselves,
and we talked about the word as it is much more beautiful to look at a child and say, oh, that person have his or her own being. In a good way. They're there and they know who they are and they relax in it.
We haven't in the language, I think we could say they carry themselves in a nice way. But we don't say that about children. We say they're well behaved. And if you would say that to an adult, they would be offended.
That's true. In English we have that also. You could say someone's very gracious, and that's a beautiful compliment.
That's better.
Like this gracious way of being in the world.
But to go back to the whole homeschooling, unschooling. So what happened was that 2 or 3 houses down the road we lived, there was a wonderful woman who became friends because we had children the same age, and Cecilia and her hang out a lot, and she wanted to homeschool, and her start was actually because her son had such severe allergies.
No.
She was the one who she was the one who opened the door for us, where it was, is there even a thing called homeschooling? Because if you're not in that world, if you don't know it's out there, it's not, people don't know it's an option. Which is also the reason we are doing our podcast, is to let people know, hey, you can do whatever you want out there, but you need to know there is an option of choosing not to school, of just living your life. And the thing that happened was that I very much wanted Storm to go into the same school, the free school that our oldest daughter was in. And he just kept saying to us that he didn't want to. And he said, your mom and dad, how many times do I need to tell you? I really don't think this school thing is something for me. It might be okay for the others, but it's not right for me. And I believe he is very true in seeing that. But it took me time back then, and I will tell it so my wife won't. I was the one trying to pressure, also with the private school. I was like, what private school, that is kind of snobbish. I went to a public school that was good enough for me. Why should a child go there? And then when he didn't want to go to school, I was like, let's try to force him. And then it just became very much a clear sign from the universe that the weekend where he should start in school on the Monday, we was on to...
That's so weird.
Isn't it? Well, my wife will tell it better then.
So you pressured me. So I was totally on board with the homeschooling, but I knew that if my husband disagreed, it would be a nightmare. So I thought I'd have to do whatever he asks me to do, and then hopefully we'll end up homeschooling. And so we started, and I said, so his veto was the kid has to at least try.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
my veto was, I'm not going to leave him there unless he tells me it's okay. So, and for some reason, I was the one to take him there.
I went to work.
No, you didn't.
At that period?
You
maybe
had
not.
maternal leave because I had the cancer disease and we had the baby. So you were actually just at home.
Maybe I was just
You were
chilling.
lazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I went with the child 3 times a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday morning, for as long as he could handle it, for as long as he would be fairly comfortable. He's a very, very nice child. He wants to cooperate, and it was very important for his father that he tried, so he tried. And he kept saying, I don't think it's for me. It's not going to work for me. All the other kids might enjoy it. I'm not going to be compatible with the schooling. And this was a radical free school. It's nothing strict.
Yeah.
And yet he felt this is not for me. So I did that. I went 3 times a week with my son. I went back at 11, showed up at 9, left at 11. So anyway, after 3 weeks, a teacher sat me down, had a conversation with me, a really annoying conversation, told me things about attachment. And I'm a trained psychologist. And I was like,
but they actually said, we think he's too attached to you.
There is no such thing as too much attachment, but he obviously didn't know. And it was not about attachment. We have a healthy relation and there is nothing wrong with that. What was wrong from the perspective of the school was that we respect our child. So, and he sat me down and he said all these things. And I was like, yeah, whatever. But what he also said was, if this is going to work, I think the father should show up with the child. And I thought, that's a good idea. Especially because it's the father who will want this thing and might see how horrible it is for our child. It's just not compatible with school because he's right. He knows himself very well. And so this was a Thursday afternoon. I came back. I told my husband, you're going to be the one to go on Tuesday.
Yeah, what we did was we actually...
So what did you feel then?
No, I as every other normal parent, you as dads in this, it's still, can we do this? So what I was doing was I said, okay, let's try it out for 3 months. And then after a week or 2, it just felt, more natural. It felt right.
So first you said at the funeral, after the funeral, when we drove back, you said, why are we forcing our child to do this thing that he clearly doesn't want to do? Life is precious. Every moment is precious. We do respect our children's own opinion and their right to own their own hours. I don't know why we're doing this. And I said, I don't either. And you said, okay, let's do it. Let's homeschool. But let's do it for 3 months and see how it goes. And you said, I had to teach him how to read and write. I had to teach him math and all these things. Yeah. And so
is this the same one who said, I'm not going to learn to read?
Yes.
Yeah, because you pressured him. That was why.
It's the same one.
Yeah, it's the same
and
one.
He'd already said it at that point.
Yeah.
So I sat down and tried to teach him how to read and write and do math. And to be honest, I cheated. I didn't do it. I told my husband I did it, but I didn't. I wanted to do it because if we have a negotiation and we agree on something, obviously I want to do it. I'm not not nice, or how can I say that? I wanted to do it, but it didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is something that so I started out in Switzerland. We sent our daughter to the morning kindergarten when she was 4, and she loved it and she loved being there, and it was right next door to the house. And I sort of missed her terribly. It felt so strange to send her away at 4. And then we moved to the States, and I knew in the States I would homeschool. And I think partly it was because I was in my own place, and I knew, in Switzerland, I was like a baby when I moved there. I had to learn how to be in that country all over again. And, but moving back here, I was like, no, we're not going to do the school. And I knew the school would be 7-8 hours a day too here, with no sense of no lunch breaks, it's grueling. And so, but I started out thinking I must teach them how to read. I must teach them math. And then like all my morning is just math and reading with children who are not really hungry for this. And then, you know, and I know a lot of homeschooling families here, and it just seems like the mom takes on all this pressure to keep the house clean, provide the meals, educate the children. And like, it's so much pressure. And it's not, and the thing that I think that makes the pressure the worst is that you're not looking at your child's needs.
No.
All these, like, it's like all the extraneous things, like you ought to do it this way.
Yeah.
And you have to tick all the boxes, and everything has to be perfect, and you're in charge, and all this.
I think it comes from anxiety, some of it, because we also started out with some of the crutches, like, okay, we tried to buy some math books and different things. And it's the same. When am I good enough? When have we done enough? When have we proven that we're doing it well? And it comes from different things, I believe. One of them is a general anxiety of what would other people think. And the other is that we don't have, a lot of us don't have a measuring system. We don't have a lot of people to talk with it about when we homeschool or unschool, where we can understand, and this is okay. It's okay just to live your life. Nobody needs to learn the same thing in the same page. People are different. It is okay. And I recently quit my full-time job a year ago. And I remember how it was for me to reinvent myself. And I still had, even though we live very alternative, I had this, when am I good enough? When is it okay that I just enjoy a day in the sun with friends? Is that okay? Do I need to do something?
Yeah.
And I think that is something that the deschooling process is so important for the parents, that they understand how they can free themselves of this system that was incorporated into them through kindergarten, school, and the whole idea of how you need to go to work, and both people need to go to work for you to be a productive human being.
And your success, if you look great and is fairly skinny, have a big house, 2 cars, kids at some fancy school, and all of these accomplishments, maybe some people in that situation are very happy. I'm not, maybe they are, but I don't think we all have the same path. And I think that striving for the same thing and trying to create something that looks like that is not authentic. And I think it's very important that we get to a point where we as parents can remove ourselves from the idea that how my house looks and how my children's accomplishments falls back on me. It's not. When I set my children free and let them, do their thing, I can't. So we have our oldest daughter, now 24. She's coming out with her 3rd book. She's a published writer, which is a fairly impressive accomplishment. And people say, "Oh, you must be so proud." And I'm not. So proud would be as if I did it, but I didn't do it. I didn't write those books. I didn't write. She's been writing for all those years, and I just cooked the pasta. I think she owns that.
Yeah.
and I tried. I'm happy for her, obviously, but I'm not.
Well, it's like to say, like, if she had, I mean, it's funny because you know who she is, and you love her, and like, I guess this is like, to say that like her accomplishment is the thing that like makes you proud versus who she is as a person. And had she chosen a life of, I don't know, a totally hidden life that had no outward accomplishments, wouldn't change who she is. And that's what you love and know, right? And that's really
what makes me proud with her specifically is that she had found something she does that make her happy, and that she has found love, and she can take care of herself financially. That makes me proud. What she produces, it's not the essential in that sentences.
But do you feel proud in the way that you feel this is your doing?
Then you can say relaxed, satisfied, very, and proud that we have helped succeed.
This is what we want.
Guide her.
Yeah, I get that. But I'm just saying, with the situation you described before with the mothers, they try to have the perfect house and do the perfect homeschooling and have the perfect life and do the perfect yoga and do the perfect Instagram, perfect everything at the same time. And it's a huge pressure to try to be one of those mothers.
Yeah.
I don't know how they, I don't know. I think my eyebrows would be like back here if I
I think what I'm
trying to, and I want to like try to put something in between there and say, this is not necessary. We don't have to take that role in that way. We don't get to live. Actually, we don't get to live if we're all the time ticking boxes to make this perfection going on. We don't get to chill and to unfold what's going on inside ourselves. We will keep running around trying to make everything external look perfect or seem perfect or tick all the boxes. I did all the math, but did you kind of enjoy it? Did math make any sense to you? And did you, the mother, enjoy it? If you enjoy homeschooling and the kids enjoy participating and it's all voluntary and happy, then there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
It's about
there's two things that you brought up that I want to ask about. One is so I'll share a little bit about my own thinking in the last couple of weeks. So I've been like listening to a lot about unschooling and thinking about unschooling, and there was a part of me that wanted to think through every dimension or every objection and like sort of be like, okay, I've thought it all through and now I know I'm going to make the right decision here. And then I was just praying. I wasn't really praying about it necessarily, but I was praying, and all of a sudden I realized, like, this is giving me so much joy. And this is a way of like being with my children that means I'm trusting. I trust that they're good. I trust that learning is not something I have to like pound into them, but that learning just means, I love the way you say it, like, we're just living life. Yeah. Like you see something beautiful, you pursue it because you want to be with something beautiful. You see something good and you want to embrace it. Like, and I was like, this is just how I want to live. And I don't know all the answers to everyone's objections.
No.
And they're not all my objections. I don't know the answers to it. But like, once I realized it's a response, I'm responding to something greater than me, more beautiful than me. It was just peace, because it was like, I can respond and I don't have to be the one. And it was, so yeah, I wondered, I want to know about if this is true for you too, that like something that changes it, that lets a lot of life in, instead of the like, I will produce a life. I'm actually responding to a life. I
feel like a servant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can
not
that
just
resonates
to my children, but to whatever God you might believe in put us here. Or some people call it coincidence. I don't. But I feel that I always felt this, even before I became a mother, that I'm not here to understand the plan or the system or the strategy of this life. That's not my job to understand it. My job is to understand or to find the next step. Yeah. I'm just a part of the whole machine, and I play a part, and I don't know that part. And I'm actually happy I don't know. I don't want to know how it ends. I want to live it. And I think that's why we're here. So I'm happy to fumble my way through life I know
Yeah,
that
it's beautiful.
I never understand what's going on, to be honest.
And I just follow my wife.
Put that out as a quote on Instagram. So no, but actually I don't. I have to feel my way. I have to find my way. I have to try. I have to make mistakes. You said that thing about failure in the beginning. It doesn't really resonate with me because I don't see it as failure. I think when we know what we don't want, we will find out what we do want. And we have to like kind of hit the walls while trying to find the path. And I know that it always happens after the fact that I get why I do
things. You see it.
I have strong intuition, and sometimes I make huge mistakes. Yeah. And I think it's part of the journey to just make some mistakes. And we spend a lot of time talking, evaluating what's going on. How did we feel? What do we want to adjust with all of us, not just the two of us, but also with the children. Yeah. And I think that whole navigation system is beautiful. It's maybe the essence of life. Well, you want to say something?
Yeah. I'll just add on that the times we have been in doubt now. Let me start here. Today, we know ourselves and have talked so much about our values that walking in life have become a lot easier. But earlier, we sometimes could stand in a situation and think, what are we going to do here? And then we, for a period to align ourselves, or whatever you would call it, had figured out what are our values in life, what are the top 5 things we find valuable. And then when we got a little weirded out by what is right to do right now, then we looked at our values for what is it that is important for us. And it's inspired by that. I worked for many years together with Janet Atwood, who is an American self-help author, written a book about the passion test and helping people find their passion and stuff like that. Fantastic woman, but we used, inspired by her, we figured out where are we, what are our values, and now it's integrated that we know what is valuable for us. And
now also, after we've been homeschooling for I think 12 maybe years, something like that, our kids are pretty smart. So
you've seen the growth. You've seen the growth.
They will sometimes say, what are we doing? This is wrong. And then they have some great analysis and they'll say, listen, we have to adjust this and that and go this way. And I'm like, you're right.
And I have something to add to that, which is true more than now. It's more than 10 years ago, we didn't send our son to school. We have peeled layer of what the outside world kind of thought we should do, but that is internalized in many people. That they have an idea about, I need to do this, but they don't ask themselves why, and they don't often see it's because this is what I think society wants of me, or this is what I think my co-workers or parents wants of me. So as we have been living outside the box for so many years, there is not a lot of it left. It's still there.
I think it's very profound, actually. So I don't.
Oh, it's still there.
I never really gave what everybody else thinks, but I struggle with what I think.
Yeah,
that's worse. That I can sometimes just not be comfortable with whatever, and I really have to. I was schooled for 23 years straight, from 6 to something. I was on 30 when I quit university. And it was, I don't know, it was really hard for me to stop, because it was, then what? There's no curriculum. There's nothing I am supposed to learn in the next 3 months. Then what am I doing in life? I had to cope with that, but then not asking my children to do the same thing has been really a challenge. I knew it was the right thing, but actually not doing it and keep going in not doing it, and handling that my first homeschool child refused to learn to read, which is just such a milestone. Like if he at least would just read. But he refused to read, and he was very old before he read. And now you will never see him without a book. And it's flipped over, but it doesn't matter. It was very hard for me in the beginning. I really had my black moments, but I learned fairly quickly, I hope fast enough, to just talk to the kids about it. I would tell them, now I have one of my black days. You're going to have to help me. I think all these.
So tell me about that, because this comes out of me too sometimes. Like at the beginning of the year, my son wanted to play violin. Now he says, I don't want to do violin anymore. And I see he has an aptitude for it. I see he's like, it's possible for him, but he doesn't want to do it. And there's a part of me that wants to say like, well, let's try it for this many more months, or try playing these songs, or like, and I see I get in the way, and then I see that a part of me wants to say no, like let him choose his life, and then I say no, let me help him choose the best life. And I
that's
so
a
tell me what it's
slope.
Like.
Do any of you play the violin?
To get through a black day, or to talk to your kids about it. Tell me about that. Yeah.
I'm going to start because I talk a lot. Do you have any black days?
The black days, they sometimes it's really good to eat some chocolate to be fed. No, seriously. Eat some chocolate.
Have a glass of wine.
Have a glass of wine, whatever it gives you the relaxed shoulders. Talk with some friends. There will always be black days. There will be there are days where we question, have we done it good? How is it going with this child compared to this child? But
did we ruin everything?
But that's where it's a good day to be co-parenting, two parents together, which we are, in all honesty. I did less of the parenting due to me being away 8 to 10 hours a day earlier in our life. And even though we have been full-time traveling, I was at home, but I still did less of the parenting because I was in front of the computer. I did. Of course, I still do less parenting than Cecilie, but the amount of parenting I do have grown over time. And the last 5 years, I've been there, even in the room, because we lived in a bus for a lot of the time. So I've been present, but detached at the same time. So where I want to reach is to say that if both parents are at home, it's much easier to step in and take over when the other one has a day with less energy. It is much easier for me to say, hey, Cecilie, maybe you're not there right now, and she could control herself. Or the other way around. If I lost my temper, Cecilie could stop me, So the value of being more than one parent is so enormously important, I think.
It's been great. Yeah.
It's been really great for both of us, because I lose it sometimes it's there.
But now you talk about when you kind of lose your temper.
No, but it's the same as having a black day. You can see, okay, now it's today, I need to step up.
Because the doubt sometimes will just eat you alive.
But we have been very lucky. Maybe it's not luck, but I seldom see that we have lost our faith in our own parenting skills on the same day. And maybe it's just natural maybe it's just natural in a good relationship. You're like, oh, now he's down, I step up. And then the day after it can be reversed. So I think that is a big joy of the location-independent work that has become more and more possible. And there is kind of something wrong with this one family, one house, sitting alone behind the closed doors that makes parenting more difficult.
But talking to other homeschooling mothers can also be hard. Especially if they're these strict Instagram mothers. It can be very hard to be an unschooling cadence mom. I can't, I'm not showing up with like little nice boxes with food that is decorated and I don't know, white shirts and sharp knives and everything perfect to a homeschool meetup. I'm totally chaotic, walking backwards, can't find the place, too late. everything is, and I forgot food, or I brought too much and I can't carry it or whatever. So, no, and I find it really hard. Like for me, it's always a risk if I show up at homeschool meeting that I could meet one of these mothers that would put me completely off, where I just feel totally underwhelmed by my own accomplishments, and it becomes accomplishments, and I feel off, and I feel that I'm wrong, and I compare, and I kind of die, and it's not very nice. But if you can find someone to talk to, other unschoolers, and
just in all honesty,
that is the second best thing to do. The best thing to do is to talk to the children. That's been my thing. I always said that the trust we have in each other is the most important thing we have after love. We need to trust each other. And in order to trust each other, we have to be true. We have to be authentic. We can't pretend. And I have no secrets from my children or my husband. I tell them how I feel. And sometimes it's not appropriate. Sometimes it's really annoying for them. And it would have been nicer not to know. But I tell them where I am with things and how I feel about them.
I mean, in my experience, though, not saying what you think or feel, it doesn't actually change that they have to deal with what you think or feel.
Exactly.
It just makes it harder because you can't see it. It's sort of like I prefer aggression to passive aggression. Punch me in the face so I can respond. Don't undermine me slowly and quietly.
Or just let me know that you're really annoyed and tell me.
And children, children are so fine-tuned in understanding where the parents are in their emotional life. For example, we have had, friends who went through a divorce where they decided to not tell it to the children in the start. And it was just like, what? That's weird. That's not fair against your children.
My mom
will, go through this. There's something wrong with mom and dad, and then they will blame themselves. Is it me?
That's the thing. My mom always says children are excellent observers and terrible interpreters. So they say, they see the problem and then they say, it must be my fault. I must And so it makes it just really amplifies the problem. But so I wanted to ask two things about, I have three questions in mind, but I've heard you talk on the podcast about having to not having peers and really having to go inside and sort of find the grounds to make your decisions from, or to, you say we know our values now, but I think even if you have people to talk to, you have to do this work.
Yes.
Just a parent, you have to go. And I find sometimes I feel a little bit like a crazy lady because I can't pick up a curriculum and run with it. I'm constantly going back to what's the truest position for us? In a sense, I have to constantly bathe in what I know to be true, what I know to be the most important things, so that I can make decisions for us, so that I can look at my kids with those eyes. And so I would love to hear about, how that was for you to go do that work. And then the other thing that I want to ask about is
should we take one question at a time?
Or
are they combined?
We can try to answer shortly. And
okay. The short answer is super confronting.
I love that you say that, because it's so beautiful to be with people like this, but that beauty does not mean easy.
Oh, no.
We have this saying.
It's not the easy choice.
No.
Some people think it's really easy and you can just sit down and have coffee all the time and watch TV and you're not really doing anything. And unschooling is not the easy choice. I'm sure.
But the hardness is different than what we talked about before. When you have a model in mind, my kids are going to learn Latin and Greek, and they're going
to. That is, I call it educational crutches or even parental crutches. It is something you as a parent do to know that you have done right.
I guess my point is both are very hard lives. They're very hard lives.
Yeah.
But the hardness of doing the work to say what you feel, to look at your, to take off, to say, why is it that I want that crutch? And then rip that away and really look at that brokenness or that fear, whatever it is, that in the end, like, it's so hard, but then it leads to more beauty, more delight, more joy. Not that the hardness ever like goes away, because we're always, but it's like the other hardness to me, it just left me alone and sad.
Yeah.
And desperate.
And I think in the long run, you would have wasted a lot of life. You wouldn't actually have lived it, because you would be this I don't know, controller machine thing that would kind of just get everything done in the right way.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't get to actually live.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about it. And I think, yes, it's complicated and it's confronting, and I have to look at all my demons, and it's hard work as well, because with the unschooling point of view that we at least hold, we have the highest respect for our children. I don't even like the word children. It's like it connotes these negative ageism kind of ideas that they are less worthy or less whatever. I really truly believe that they have as much right to be here, and their opinion is as valuable, and their choices are their choices to make. And I can tell them my opinion, but I can't tell them what to do. And it's not easy, but it's not exactly hard either now. It's been more than 10 years. I'm used to it. Our children are very, very, they carry themselves very nicely.
They carry themselves very nicely.
They know who they are. They know what they want. They know when they need help. They know when they want us to shut up, and they will tell us. And I think on the long run, it might be slightly easier. Could be. But I just had I just had some onion layers peeled off myself this week, and that was not easy.
And there is this about ageism, which it's an error I keep repeating, and I hope that I repeat it less and less.
Maybe with the grandchildren.
Maybe with the grandchildren, but it's very easy. It's just to ask yourself, would I ever talk like that to another grown-up person?
Yeah.
Would I talk like that to my partner? And if you put that filter over how you talk to your children,
and how you think about
it, it is annoying. I mean, even, just the normal, hey, put on a shirt, it's cold outside. Would Cecilie say that to me? I would be annoyed if she talked to me like that. Mm-hmm. I can still from time to time do it to my children, but it's very, very difficult, because it is a way that has been imprinted in the way I've been raised. And
well, I do have a question in this. I want to know what it means to be, how radical it means, because, so for example, we eat our meals together in our home, and partly why, like, I realize there's some things that I believe are beautiful and human, like learning how to eat a meal together, like setting I don't want to make it sound like I daily succeed in a beautiful table, but I, even just the simple thing of like putting the sandwiches on a platter and then setting it out on the table, or I made the decision. When my husband's mother, she spent all their birthday money collecting silver spoons for them and forks, and then we had the silver, and I thought, oh, it's silver, I shouldn't use it. And then I said, no, I'm not going to put it in the cabinet. We're going to use it every day. Like, like just deciding like beautiful things should be in our life, and we should learn how to be together in a beautiful way. So, I mean, are there things that like things in your life that you're like, it's more human to eat together? Is that like, or is it sort of like we eat whenever we want, or is it both?
It's both.
It's both. We had the experience in the start when the kids were away and I was back at work, that for families that lives apart, then the meal is something where they meet and combine and can talk about that day. That angering that the meal was is less important for us now as we live together all the time.
Okay.
So we don't have a need to be angered in the same sense. That said, we prefer to eat together, but that's also logistic.
No, it's not mainly logistics.
No, but it's also, and it's nice to share a meal together and talk together.
I mean, in a sense, it's very cynical to say it's just logistics.
No, I say right? it's also,
yeah.
For example, when we live in when we have this nice Mercedes van we travel in, when we travel in that one, we prefer to eat together because it's...
Well, the van has to stop. The kitchen has to be unpacked.
And we need to clean up right away afterwards.
Without having actually a sink. So it's very annoying if someone comes in 10 minutes later. But I think that, so yes, it's logistics, but I think it's mainly family values that we prefer to have a meal together.
Yeah.
Our life is ever changing because we're nomads. So it's very dependent on the context. Sometimes we have a context where many meals, it makes sense that we just do our own thing. Sometimes it just makes a lot of sense to have all that would be 2 meals together every day. Breakfast is whenever people wake up. Do I impose it on the children? I'm very radical, but a few things I say, this is a family thing and I want you to be present, because I think it's precious that we as a group work very well together, and we will not, if we don't have these moments of togetherness. We also try to go for a really long walk at least once a week, like really long, all day. Because this we will just, all of the conversations will be finished, and everything will be, we can get around all of the emotions and everything we've thought about, and we enjoy doing it with other people, but I prefer that at least sometimes we do it just the 5 of us, and that's kind of mandatory as well. But I don't have to push my children. They enjoy it, and they know how, okay, maybe I don't feel like doing it today, but today is the day the van is parked next to a nice trail, and I know that, we are all happy if we do it, so I'll come along even though I'd rather do something else today. And we separate between time where you can do your own thing and time where we try to be together, all 5 of us. So
I mean, in my own life, this was like something to learn that was precious, was that there are moments when somebody proposes something to me that's more beautiful than what I want for myself. Like, and it's been beautiful to learn to say yes to something that maybe at the surface, I'm like, I don't want to go to this picnic, but I'm going to say yes because I can objectively look and see there's something true here that's being proposed. And so I can kind of get over my whatever it is and go.
But there might be some onion layers to peel off when we feel that we're uncomfortable with saying yes to what life has to offer. So
that brings up this question that I have. Well, let me ask this first. I've been talking about unschooling to people, and first of all, I love what you say, living life instead of unschooling, because I think that that's really actually open and full, and unschooling is maybe a little too negative. And some other homeschooling moms I know who have a lot of children, one has 6 and one has 7. They're like, unschooling, it must be way more work. And what they sort of see is like, my child's going to say, I want to do paper mache. And then I have to like organize the paper mache. And then another child's going to say, I want to do this. And then I have to organize this. And then the child's going to say, I don't want to do that anymore. And I have to like help them like dig deeper and go longer. And so they see it as sort of like, one, I think they still have this combination of like, they want their children to succeed. And so if the child says, I want to do paper mache, then they want them to like take paper mache to the end of the road.
And make something really amazing. maybe
like really be excellent at it. And in the course of this conversation, I realized something about excellence, that I don't really desire my children to be excellent for the sake of being excellent.
No.
I desire them to know truth and beauty and goodness, and to really embrace those things. Because I think if something is beautiful and you love it, like excellence comes along with it to the capacity you have it.
And maybe excellence is not needed.
And
I think something else. The workshops, these children, imaginary children you talked about, seems like the mother thinks that she's the servant, that she's the one who has to like come up with the craft material and
she does,
set it all out and clean up after it. Whereas,
or organize it, or have shelves in the basement.
Point of view, I would say, okay, how would you do that?
Mm-hmm.
I'd stay on the couch. I want to do paper mache. Okay, just clean up after yourself.
Yeah,
I'm not going to. I want to learn to speak Japanese. Okay, go do it. And I will tell them, do you need my help? But I'm not a library of options for setting up workshops and finding courses. And I believe they can do that. They're very capable of doing it themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're not, well, then they can learn.
Yeah. About the excellence, how we perceive what our children should do. As we've been talking about peeling off the layers of onion, I was just sitting and thinking about how do I still approach other people. It's often that when you come and meet new people, you talk about all the superficial things about, so what do you do for work kind of stuff, dialogue. And it's more difficult it feels more difficult in a social setting with new people to just really talk about life and ask them how they are. You stay on this level of,
My father-in-law loves to say to people, "Are you happy?"
Yeah, I love that.
And that's like a really confronting question. Yeah. What do you mean?
And also sometimes I start with the normal, so what do you do for work? Then I go over to does it make you happy to work with this? What is it in it that you find fascinating since you're working with it? And then we can have good conversations. But sometimes it is very easy to just, myself, even though I've been outside the box for many years, I fall into the trap of just talking about the no good nonsense. Yeah.
It's okay. We have children.
Yeah, we have children. Loads of children.
And also actually the hours.
Yeah. We should take care of it. So and I could continue, but as we
did you have a third question?
Yes.
I just had a question about the thing that came in my mind was the forgiveness. Like I find that I just find that this is something really essential in my family is to ask for forgiveness from my children when I make mistakes, and to let them know that I forgive them when they hurt me. And I don't know. Yeah, forgiveness is a loaded word.
No. I have me. Yes, I have a thing about it. I've been thinking about forgiveness, and there is something egoistic in wanting to be forgiven. As I see it, when I want to be forgiven, what I actually sometimes want is to erase the wrongs I did. But they have been done. I cannot erase them by asking for forgiveness. So asking for forgiveness for me is something I do for myself, where maybe I shouldn't ask for forgiveness. Maybe I should just say, you know what, I'm very sorry. And then do my inner work about being okay with having fucked up. I have with our grown-up daughter, I had the way I'm a parent today, the way I'm a father today is way softer less shouting. In many ways, I am a better dad than I was for her. And what I've done is I've went and said to her, you know what? I would have wished I could have done better, and I'm sorry I wasn't. But I do not ask her for forgiveness, because that is something I can give it's something I need to give myself, because it is me who has to live with what I did. And so it's me. Yes.
Because exactly there, I think my point is the most important. I think forgiveness is very rarely needed. I think understanding is what we need. If you understand something, you don't have to forgive it. You just know where it came from. You understand why it happened. And if the person who did it, that would be yourself, understand, okay, I did this because I was here. I had this point of view. Had these kind of ideas, made me do this. I was wrong. And I understand now that I was wrong. Of course, you have to go and talk to the person you did wrong and explain, but maybe not too much, because all of the explaining is actually about you, and it was the other person that was hurt. So I find it much better that I understand why I did what I did, and I offer to the person I did wrong an explanation. I can say, I did wrong. I know I was wrong, and I'm sorry. Do you want to know why I did it, or what do you need from me? That's much more
beautiful.
fair. Yeah, because forgiveness is, can you forgive me? Because
I guess I was thinking of forgiveness a little bit differently in that so I myself had like a very harsh father, and he came from a really harsh situation. So I want to say that he did much better than where he came from, and I'm grateful for that, but he was harsh. And so at a certain point I needed to like confront that woundedness in me, the way it like affected my life, and then to say, sometimes I didn't necessarily feel not angry with him, but I began to say, I forgive you for hurting me. And that I really feel that forgiveness over time, I don't feel angry with my dad anymore. He's dead now, but before he died, like I was free of like anger, and sometimes I see like him come out in me, like, but
that's how it goes.
Yeah, but then I can also forgive myself, and I can forgive him again. And recently I was working on just like forgiving people who had hurt me, and I was just filled with such a tenderness for my dad, and just a tenderness for who he was and what he tried to give us, and what he suffered. And I think that I'm more free to have that tenderness to my children as well, instead of sort of repeating that harshness. So that's why forgiveness has become so important to me. And I think you're right. You can't demand forgiveness for someone. And I get the point about egotistical, but at the same time, I want to let my children know that I've forgiven them when they hurt me, or that, when we have a moment where I feel whatever, my son dumped my coffee on me this morning accidentally. I needed to then apologize.
Don't do that. Badly. Not the morning coffee.
No, the morning. You should have been
I
very
usually
angry.
say there is 0 points for knocking over my coffee.
But then I want him to know that, like, that I want him to know that didn't trump the goodness in him. And that, like, because he's so good, he's also forgivable for when he makes, and that was a mistake. Other times there's a more intentional wound that happens. But so I want them to know they're forgivable, that their sins are not their failings. That's not what defines them. What defines them is something much deeper and very good.
Yeah. Well, I think I'll stick to my understanding. I think understanding is much better than forgiving.
Yeah. Okay.
Forgiving. So if I have anger inside myself towards someone, you might say it would be a good thing for me to forgive and let go. And that's true. But I don't think that my children even should think that they need to be forgiven if they do something that is not optimal. because we all do things that are not optimal. Sometimes we're too tired, sometimes we're too clumsy, sometimes there is some information we didn't have, or I don't know, we didn't think straight or whatever, we did something too fast. And I don't think it needs forgiving, because that would put me in a situation of kind of power, and I'm like up here and I can forgive. Whereas my understanding that this is just part of the flow of life is a much more equal way of handling this. If they feel really bad about something, I think being understood, come from, why did it happen? Also, because I'm sure you do very well, but from where I am, I just think if I give forgiveness for, let's say, that coffee, would it have been an option not to give it? And where would that leave us? You see my point? I think, who am I to hold that power over other people, that I can give or not give forgiveness for something, whatever it is, basically whatever it is. And I have been very angry with people, as in very, very, I'm not going to name them, but I have had things going on. Where someone talked about forgiveness to me, and I think you're right. When it's inside yourself, you have very good to let go of the anger. And if that is forgiveness, okay. But that's a dynamic I have within myself, my own evaluation.
You don't even
there's like mistakes and accidents, but there are times when I've just done the wrong thing. And sometimes I did it out of, I know, maybe out of fear or selfishness, whatever. Usually it's fear underneath it all. It's often fear, but and I've been hurt by people for whatever their reasons. In a certain sense, there's sometimes things happen and you'll never know, that person's gone and you don't want them back anyway. You're not going to ever talk it out. And my mom would say to me, she's like, forgiveness is when you carry this anger, it's sort of like a stone that you got in your backpack. And she would say, it's like it says on it, you owe me more than you can ever pay. And when you think about somebody who's really abused a child, they can never pay that back. You can never fix it. But holding on to the stone, in a sense, she would say the forgiving is not about saying it was okay, it was right.
It's about releasing.
It's about letting go of that stone, so you
absolutely.
don't carry it for the rest of your life.
In your relation with yourself.
I think that's the thing that's most important to me.
Forgiveness, but if it's in your relation with other people, I think there's a power situation going on.
And I agree with that.
That's not fair, and I don't believe in it.
I agree with that.
That's the distinction.
My forgiveness doesn't make you good, or my forgiveness doesn't. I agree with what you're saying. I think what's most important to me is the internal work.
I think it's more important to say, I understand you. You were too busy.
And just it is. You probably sensed it already, but it's important for me to say, when you ask us questions and we answer them out from what we believe is the best way to parent. And do we fuck up still? Yes, of course. Of course. Yeah. No, don't think they're doing this good all the time. No. We talk out from our beliefs and how we have succeeded to do stuff from time to time, and
what principles
we have.
No, but I want to say that this is what I really love about this podcast. Is I was I said to my husband, these people, they don't chit chat. They get right down to the deepest things, and they talk about it, and they talk about it honestly, which to me is I've never felt like your podcast is a to-do list of how to parent, or a to-do list of what went out. It always feels like this is something that you can take in and think about, and it starts a process that helps you be better, just because you're talking about the real and the true things, the deepest principles that from which things can grow. It's not a set of rules. It's like fertilizer.
I'm so grateful, because sometimes, we talk to people on Zoom and I feel, why am I even doing this?
Is there anyone listening?
I'm deliberately unprepared when we do it because I want it to be authentic and spontaneous. But sometimes I feel like an idiot, to be honest. Like, and then afterwards, I'm like, I could have said that smart thing. And but I think the spontaneous vibe and the just talking about things. And you're right, we go straight to the point, but it's not a planned point.
Yeah.
And then maybe we're back to that trust in life I talked about before, that I feel like I'm a servant. I just walk the next step and I have no idea where I'm going, to be honest.
I see what I see in you is this deep affection for reality. And that you
reality
really
is nice.
Yeah. And it's
flowers.
not always pleasant.
Flowers.
It's not great, but you have this like affection for reality and a certain that to responding to reality is the truest thing we can do. Yeah.
I think so. Then we can start negotiating what is real, but we have to.
We have to stop.
My feet are like really cold. And we're currently living at a castle in France with something like 10, 15 other world schooling families. And we promised to do an escape room.
Oh, yeah. We're going to have fun.
I need to cook before that.
Okay.
So whatever much I love talking to you, we have to. We can reschedule.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time. It was really delightful.
We can do it again. Let's do it again. You can build up your questions, and then like I don't know when we have time, but some months.
Katrina, it was wonderful having you, and I hope that that people out there also could enjoy listening more to our story. As I said in the start, we often just talk a lot with the guests because we're so curious. So it was for us a big joy also to be able to share some more of our story. So thanks a lot for that opportunity.
We couldn't
thank you.
Without you. No. It's hard to just talk about yourself.
Yeah, it's like, here I am.
Well, thank you so much for sharing yourselves. It's really been a pleasure. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks and goodbye.